Wrong person. Early in the morning, just as the first pale light slipped through the gap in the curtains, the phone on the nightstand began buzzing relentlessly. Aurora Shen frowned, burying her face into the pillow, as if playing dead. But the ringing persisted, one call after another. Finally, annoyed, she groped around the nightstand, relying on muscle memory to swipe the screen and answer. Her voice was lazy, heavy with sleep. "Hello, where are you?" The voice on the other end exploded. "Don't sleep anymore. We're going back to Florence this afternoon, don't forget." Hearing Lydia Lin's voice, Aurora's mind went blank, then snapped awake. Her eyes flew open. She pushed herself upright and looked around. No, she looked at herself first. Her clothes were still intact. Her boots were placed neatly beside the bed. A soft down blanket covered her. Her earrings had been removed and placed in a small dish on the nightstand, everything tidy as if nothing whatsoever had happened. Only then did she begin to take in the surroundings. The room was quiet and luxurious, not the polished, standardized luxury of a hotel, but the lived-in elegance of someone who had truly made this place a home. A row of red wine racks stood by the window, a few old books casually placed on the low coffee table. A faint scent lingered in the air, citrus with a smoky cedar undertone. Opposite her was a wall-sized window, floor to ceiling, revealing a vineyard outside. Tiny string lights still hung from last night along the balcony railing. If she guessed correctly, this must be the living quarters of a private vineyard estate. Then the memories of last night returned completely. The man had helped her into the room. She had been quite drunk, barely able to stand. The moment she saw the bed, she had practically leaped onto it like an excited puppy. She remembered grabbing the sleeve of his shirt and refusing to let go, face buried in the pillow, mumbling for him to stay. The man stood by the bed, looking down at her from above, his voice low and steady. "You're not sober right now, I can't stay." She rolled over, cracked one eye open, and told him very seriously. "I know who you are," he chuckled. "Who am I?" She stared at him for a few seconds, her lips drooping, then answered, "You're Jack." "Jack who?" "Jack from Titanic," she declared confidently. Then frowned and shook her head. No, you're Tony Long. Yes, you're Tony." The man had been speechless. His expression caught somewhere between amusement and disbelief. She had fallen asleep moments later. When she went to the bathroom, she found a note on the table. The handwriting was beautiful, clean, and precise. "Feel free to use anything in the room. Breakfast is prepared. A driver will take you back to the city. Wishing you all the best." Aurora couldn't help smiling. She hadn't expected Adrian Wu to be this considerate. She put the note back, stopped overthinking, and stepped into the bathroom, staring at herself in the mirror for a few seconds. Her hair was a mess. Her eyes still carried a hint of red. Her lips had lost color. She looked worse than last night, but not terrible. She removed the sticky makeup she had slept in, washed her face, added a touch of powder, reapplied lipstick, then spritzed on some perfume. When she stepped outside, a black sedan was parked at the entrance. The driver, in a neat suit, bowed slightly and said, "Miss, he instructed me to take you back to the city." Aurora froze for half a second, then instinctively stepped back, smiling politely. "Thank you, but I already called a ride." She was not shameless enough to ride back in his car. The driver didn't insist, merely smiled. Of course, Aurora nodded, walked away, and only after passing the flower-covered fence did she finally open the rideshare app. She pretended to walk another 2 or 3 minutes, then reluctantly hit confirm, heart aching at the 40+ euros. In the car, she leaned her cheek against the window, sunlight sliding over her collarbone. Sleepiness tugged at her again, and regret followed. Maybe she should have taken the free ride. But then she remembered that calm, self-controlled man. Maybe the 40 euros were the right kind of punishment. Aurora met Lydia Lin and the others at a trendy cafe in Bre. The bell above the door chimed as she walked in and took off her sunglasses. Her friends waved enthusiastically. "Over here, Temps. Where did you disappear to last night? Tell us everything. What happened after you two left?" She sat down and took a big sip of the espresso on the table. The strong bitterness finally cleared her head a little. "Nothing happened," she said calmly, setting down the cup. "He was a gentleman. Since I was drunk, he refused to lay a finger on me." Lydia stared at her for 2 seconds, suspicious. "Are you serious?" Another friend gasped dramatically, covering her mouth with her long acrylic nails. "Oh my God, I don't believe it. What era is this where? Do you still find a man like that? Maybe he's been tricked so many times he developed reverse vigilance." "It's true, nothing happened." Aurora raised a brow, lips curling. He didn't leave any contact information. And he owns a vineyard. The man looks seriously wealthy." The moment she said that, the girls exchanged glances. "Well, that's it then. You just lost a first-class FWB. We only have an hour left before heading back to Florence. You two probably won't ever meet again, right?" Life wasn't a movie. People didn't come with labels to guide your fate. Some encounters were nothing more than a passing brush. And a quiet, inevitable loss. Aurora Shen had never expected to see him again anyway. She hadn't been living in Italy from the start. After graduating high school, she went abroad to study visual arts. Her family was well off. Her father owned a company in Beijing. But the relationship between Aurora and her father was strained to the point of breaking. Once she left the country, she never asked him for another cent. Most of the time, her life was decent, just painfully tight. She had both talent and ambition. And Italy was the place she had chosen for herself. For freedom. But freedom came with a steep price. Fortunately, public university tuition in Italy was free. Aside from the initial registration fee her mother helped with, Aurora managed on scholarships and part-time jobs. Fluent in Italian and English, she often worked as an exhibition interpreter, a local guide, and occasionally drafted curatorial texts for her professors. Life was frugal, but she refused to complain. She wanted to stay. Stay in Italy. She didn't want to go back. Those people, those memories. She wanted to leave them all far behind, but building a career here wasn't easy. She wasn't a billionaire's daughter. She had no connections. If she wanted to stay, she had to rely on her work. Her graduation exhibition was her one and only trump card. If her show was impressive enough, a gallery might notice her. A foundation might nominate her. She might receive job offers. And if she could somehow obtain the authorization to exhibit the oil painting A Poem of Desire and Light, it would be a golden heavyweight highlight on her CV. Professor Adam had told her that the collector of the painting was a Chinese man named Mr. Liu, who would soon be attending a private event at a wine estate. So Aurora spent nearly 2 months of living expenses to buy a second-hand black Saint Laurent evening gown, outdated stock, and borrowed a pair of gemstone earrings from a friend. She had never said things like "for my dreams." She was simply stubborn. What she decided to do, she would do to the end. June in Florence meant long sunsets. The blue dome of the sky slowly unfurled, crimson, amber, then streaks of rose-colored waves pouring over folds of violet dusk. A lavish party was being held at an ancient castle on the hillside. Bright lights shimmered, violin melodies mingling with the scent of ripened fruit and fermented sweetness, spreading across the sun-warmed sandstone walls. Servers carrying silver trays walked past Aurora. She picked up a glass of mezcal. She swirled the tall flute gently. The fragrance of white wine, orange blossoms, and honey drifted up to her face. The best part about sitting in a corner was that she could quietly observe everything. In the grand, elegant hall, guests in extravagant attire gathered in small circles, slender fingers holding wine glasses as they conversed with polished laughter. These were the faces that appeared on financial headlines or in the yearbooks of old European families. In every clink of glass, they displayed the sharpness of new capital and the depth of established wealth. If she weren't attending as Professor Adam's student, someone of Aurora's background wouldn't just miss the invitation. She wouldn't even make it to the foot of the mountain. She stood quietly in her corner, watching this game of status and power. She took a sip of wine, hadn't even swallowed yet, when a whisper drifted from behind the greenery. The voices slipped between the leaves, soft but unmistakable, a mix of English and Italian. "Do you see that Asian girl in the black dress?" a voice said, tinged with a snicker. "She actually wore outdated fashion to a party. How embarrassing. Can't believe Adam brought someone like that. So strange." "Well, you know, Easterners, their specialty is building connections. Lots of tricks." The mocking laugh at the end sounded like biting into a cotton ball soaked in lemon sharp and unpleasant. There was no doubt that was blatant discrimination. Insult her, fine. But discrimination? Absolutely not. Aurora stood up, set her wine glass aside, smoothed the wrinkles on her dress, and strode in their direction with a quiet fire. She didn't speak immediately. She simply walked straight toward them, steady, unhurried, until they finally noticed her presence. The moment their eyes met, time seemed to freeze. Aurora stood still, smiled sweetly, tucked her clutch under her arm, and slowly, gracefully, lifted her middle finger, nails painted jet black. Her smile remained soft, almost angelic. "F***CKU, both of you." The crude, sharp English words stunned the two elegantly dressed women into silence. Considering that some people might not understand English, she thoughtfully switched to Italian. "Sparici, get lost." Because Aurora Shen trained in boxing and worked out year-round, the muscles in her arms were clearly defined and firm. The two ladies were so frightened, thinking she might actually hit them, that they pushed each other aside, lifted their dresses, and ran away desperately. Of course, if they truly didn't understand human speech, she also had some martial arts knowledge to compensate. After they left, Aurora picked up her glass of wine and leaned against the second-floor railing. The sweetness of the sparkling wine had faded. The tip of her tongue felt a bit dry. She didn't drink anymore, and simply lowered her gaze to look at the crowd on the first floor. The hall was filled with blonde, blue-eyed Europeans, their pale skin tones blending together. Aurora's eyes swept over the crowd. Very quickly, she spotted a striking figure beside a carved Roman column. A tall man of East Asian descent, standing out even among the large European crowd. From Aurora's angle, she had a clear view of his slightly turned profile. He had one hand in his pocket, talking casually with others, his posture relaxed, unrestrained, effortlessly confident. At that moment, the man suddenly turned his head. Aurora's pupils trembled hard. All the flowery adjectives instantly evaporated, leaving only a raw, instinctive exclamation rising straight from her soul. Walk. No matter the country, this man would be considered an exceptionally rare beauty. Tall, broad-shouldered, narrow-waisted proportions that only existed in a designer's sketch. The shirt under his black tuxedo was stretched across a sturdy chest. His tailored trousers fell clean and straight, outlining the shape of powerful legs. It wasn't hard to imagine what kind of devastating body lay beneath that high-end, perfectly fitted suit. Just standing there with a glass of wine in his hand was enough to make people dizzy with fascination. It was impossible to take one's eyes off him. Looking more carefully, Adrian Wu was clearly the most eye-catching presence in the entire room. Everyone who spoke to him showed respect, some even deference. He said little, one hand still casually in his pocket. Under the chandelier lights, shadows fell across the sharp planes of his forehead and jawline, making his gray-green eyes even deeper. His thin, cool lips pressed lightly together, giving off an unmistakable sense of pressure and distance whenever he wasn't smiling. He was truly a nearly perfect man from any angle. But Adrian Wu was mixed race. The thought surprised Aurora. Professor Adam had only mentioned that his surname was Wu, and that he had donated a great deal of money to the university in recent years. He had never said that Adrian carried European blood. Aurora had originally thought that if he were fully Chinese, she might break the ice using Mandarin and increase her chances, though she wasn't sure whether he even understood Chinese. She leaned on the railing, unable to look away from him. At the same time, the man surrounded downstairs also lifted his head, his gaze sweeping across the hall. And just like that, the two of them met eyes in mid-air. The sudden connection made Aurora freeze for a moment. She quickly recovered and adjusted her expression, offering him a polite smile. But he coldly looked away. In truth, Adrian had noticed Aurora on the second floor long ago. Noticing her wasn't difficult. After all, she was one of the very few Asians in the room. When she entered the banquet hall arm in arm with Adam, he heard countless people whisper about her. Some praised her beauty and Eastern rose. Others mocked her old-fashioned dress, calling it inappropriate. But to Adrian, she left no special impression. He had seen far too many girls like her, young, pretty, ambitious, until she descended the marble spiral staircase with effortless grace, her dark eyes full of warm amusement, locking onto him directly. And she walked toward him. Besides her eyes, her long waist-length curls were dark, and her deep V-neck dress was black as well. Only her slender arms and the strip of skin at her collarbone were pale, but not a cold, icy white. A warm shade, tinged with rose. Her red lips were the single burning highlight amid the dramatic palette of black and white. "Hello, Mr. Wu." Those were the first words she ever said to Adrian. The people around him automatically stepped aside, giving her space. Aurora spoke in Mandarin, and he barely understood it. Adrian's lips curved faintly, an almost non-existent smile ghosting across them, but he didn't respond. His cold gaze lingered on her face for a brief moment, then drifted away. Music filled the dance floor as violins played a gentle waltz. The fragrance of perfumes mingled in the air. He lowered his eyes and took a sip of champagne. Aurora wasn't surprised by his reaction. In circles like this, people at the top rarely bothered to look at others directly. Allowing her to approach and say a few words already felt like a favor. She didn't lose her composure. Her polite smile remained only now she switched seamlessly into fluent Italian. "Good evening, Mr. Wu. I'm a student of Professor Adam. I wonder if I might have the chance to speak with you." The glass in his hand trembled slightly, a few veins rising on the back of his hand. Tiny champagne bubbles slid slowly up the curve of the crystal glass, catching the light as they rose. He suddenly lifted his head again, the same faint smile on his lips. Only there was no warmth in it. "I'm sorry," he said. "I believe you've mistaken me for someone else."